Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to another Muscle App training video. Today we're going to show you how to do an assessment. We have a couple of types of assessments in the app, but let me start with the idea of what are assessments and why is it important to perform them and also store them in a system. An assessment is a way for you to check the progress of the growth, but also make sure that everything is under control, including the floats, biofouling, or any issues caused by a natural event. The assessments are also very important for us to control the growth over time. So if you do a sample, we can later on use the data for machine learning, not only to predict the harvest dates or harvest amount, but also the speed of the growth. So let me show you how to do a simple assessment. Assessments in most of the cases are performed from a mobile app. If you haven't seen the video explaining how mobile app works, please have a look at our YouTube channel. There is an explanation how to do it from the mobile app, and that's the best way to do that. However, let's go to our farms, pick a farm, and pick a simple line. Now, assessments by default are automatically notifying you every 90 days to perform an assessment. This is customizable, and in many cases, you should be able to add additional assessments, for instance, just after seeding. But it's quite easy to see it on the list in here, which is the red color, means that it requires an assessment that 90 days passed. There is another way where you can check it is to go to your farms, see all lines, and select all of the lines that require assessments across all of your lines. And finally, the maps is probably another good way of checking, which is going to a single farm. You can even zoom in. They all color-coded. Greens are the ones that require assessments. There's 24 lines in here. You can clearly see which ones require assessments, which ones are empty. Those are the best ways to check your assessment. So if you wanted to add an assessment for single line, let's go to a farm and a line that requires an assessment. We have line 11A, or let's say 12A. We click on it, and we can see the history. Okay, so the history is important because we see how the mussels grew. The general overview of assessment is that you need a minimum 3 information, and that is a date, which is automatically filled for today, minimum size, maximum size, and average size. That is based on a sample. Now, the samples are different per location and per farm practices. We usually see farmers taking 3 samples from top, bottom, and the middle of the line when they lift, depending on their lift height as well. They just take a sample from the line, sort the mussels by smallest and the largest, pick the largest, smallest, and the one in the middle. When they lined up, that will allow you to see the minimum, maximum, and average. Now, this is also important to note that Mussel App clients receive a metal measurement kit that they can use for measuring the mussels. It makes it easier to measure them. It makes it easier to take a photo. And most importantly, in the future, we're hoping to be able to measure them based on the photo without any intervention. But at the moment, let's say that our mussels our mussels are 20 to 30 mils. Now, one of the important things in our system is quality control. So if I do this, the system will tell me that our assessment looks wrong because based on the data, there has been no progress in growth. What does it mean? Well, it's a simple collection. So let me correct that. That's a simple information. The last time muscles were 58 to 67, sorry, 58 to 76 with a 67 average, well, we just said that they're smaller. It doesn't make sense. Muscles don't shrink. There is a slight chance that we took a sample in a different place where the muscles didn't grow or they were seeded at a different time. But most likely we just made a mistake, so let's correct it. Our muscles are now 70 to 80. Our average is automatically just half of it, but let's do that it was 72. Now, we can measure top and bottom separately. That also help our algorithms. And that is precisely to remember that the muscles on the water column, they grow differently. There's obviously different amount of food, light, oxygen in a different depth. So we can say that on the top they were bigger, on the bottom they were slightly smaller. That will allow us to 70. That would allow us to track later on the proper growth of your muscles. Now, assessment date is today. Plant harvest date, it pulls from the in most cases from prediction. You can change it manually if you think that well, this one was planned to harvest August. Obviously, it's not going to be August last year, so we can move it forward a little bit. We can move it, say, next month. And there's a couple of options in here. The SPAT assist is something that we produced for scientists and allows you to track multiple assessments of a SPAT on a single line. In some cases, you will have different seed on a single line, and in most cases that would be for scientific research. In very rare cases, you would have more than two seeds on one line. One line would be probably you can seed it to, let's say, half, and then the other half you seed it another time, and that's it. But if you're a scientist, you might seed one line in 15 different places. So you might want to do 15 different assessments, and that's where you monitor which SPAT you're assessing. So let's skip that. Ready to harvest is a very simple indication. Once you say that the crop looks ready to harvest, it becomes a new life cycle. It tags a line to be ready to harvest. It shows it in reports. It shows it in the order of the task management. And it also changes the color of the line. This way, we will never forget the lines that were marked as ready to harvest them on time and reduce the quality. The field is also very important for the mobile application because in a lot of cases, have a look at the video on YouTube video for the mobile app. In a lot of cases, skippers filter the daily jobs based on what they're planning to do on a specific day. And if they're there to harvest, they will just filter the lines marked as ready to harvest. And that helps them to understand where those lines are. Color, currently we don't have anything. We can just set it up in here. It's custom field. I just removed everything from my assessment. Color is that is not going to go through as well. Color is the way of let me just correct this again to say next week. Color is a way of checking the meat color. So if you measure the quality of your crop based on the meat, you can set up the color. Blues in here, we treat it as biofouling. All of those fields are customizable. If you haven't seen the setup video, have a look. In New Zealand, we treat blues as a biofouling, and we are measuring it in percentage. Tons, you can estimate the tonnage. We do that for you as well. You'll see it on a different training videos as well. But if you are confident that the crop is, great, and you're estimating that there's 20 tons, it will help processing plant estimate your the workload. But in general, it's an old field. We don't really use it because we're relying on the algorithm to calculate it. Condition score, depending on different companies, you can. It's a custom field. You can modify it. It's the way how you score the quality of the shell. So you would say it's anywhere between 1 to 5, or it could be good, great, bad. As long as it's consistent, we on a setup stage, we suggest to this field to be a drop down. It helps hugely later on sorting your harvest by certain fields. Similarly to here, harvest quality, another custom field, you can sort out the harvest quality based on the biofouling and your essentially success rate. Comments very important. It allows you to communicate. Anybody in the company can see the comments, and if you say that there is something wrong or something that anybody should pay attention to, everybody can see in a company. They can help also with communicating for the future task management. And finally, images. Again, this would come from the mobile app, but we encourage everybody to upload as many images as possible, because from the boat perspective, it's one of the most used features. They really like to see what was the latest assessment, what was the last assessment, what was the previous assessment, how did it look like, what was the biofouling. I can see there is a lot of seaweed now. Was it there before, or is it new? Photos, as we say, one photo could be 1,000 words, right? So it really helps communicating. So if you create that assessment essentially appears on a history. It's super easy to navigate the history of your account. It appears also in the history of your growth, so you can see how your mussels grow over time, and that would be a basic assessment. Now, there's two other assessments that are important to explain. One would be a maintenance, and it could be visual line cleaning or general maintenance. It's essentially a way of communicating with a team that something has happened to the line. And that could be anything like, you had a biofouling, you decided to clean the line a little bit, rip off that seaweed that is all over your mussels, just to let them breathe a little bit better, feed a little bit better. You have maybe too much starfish. You decided to get rid of them from the line. So that will allow you to make that assessment. Visual assessment could be just a drive-by and just say, okay, well, everything looks okay. Floats are there. Nothing unusual. And float and line management, this is an assessment of your floats or lines. And we explain that in a separate video. So that's it from the assessments. We can report on assessments. It's a very easy. You select the year to date, or you can select the last 30 days. You can, let's say that we do the last few months because it's a test account. So let's say from September, we can generate a report, and it's super easy to print it out. Helps also skippers sometimes to take a piece of paper and understand what's on the lines that they're going to go and visit. You can control that report from here, select the lines that that you want to check, and that's the assessment. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to flick us an email. Any suggestions, happy to hear that, and we're here to help.